Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Unstoppable Pursuit podcast, where we're pushing the limits on business, life, and health. I'm Brian Benson, and I have this beautiful hunk of man meat next to me, my co-host, Michael Stahl. Look at those muscles. Jesus. He works out on the weekends, the only guy I know. And today, we're talking about leadership. All right, Mike, we're going to start with Mike's book, Dominate Your Day. Check it out on his website, michaelstahl.com, and he's going to read a couple passages from it to get this thing kicked off.
All right, and I quote, "The interesting thing about stepping out into a position of leadership and expertise is that you are voluntarily putting yourself in a position to be criticized and overanalyzed. Some of our greatest leaders and innovators have taken on positions knowing that not everyone is going to like them. To them, completely winning everyone over is not their goal. Their goal is to blaze a path not yet taken that helps the greater good. Their goal is to implement change for the better and do something different to help others, whether it's a product or service. To get so caught up and concerned with the opinion of everyone in existence would be a waste of time. You cannot please everyone, and not everyone is going to like you. You don't have to like everyone either. When you dare to be different, you dare to open yourself up to so many things. It can include some negativity, but since you know your mission, your goal, and who you are, the negativity bounces right off. You are too busy changing lives. You are too busy chasing your dream and actually living. So I ask you to think about something. Someone has to be the leader. Someone has to open the door first, and someone has to walk through it before everyone else. These so-called crazy or different people are not all that different from you. The only difference is that they took a leap of faith to leave their impact and pursue their passion. In the world of false criticism and negativity, remember this, the lion is not concerned with the opinion of the sheep. Whether you get thrown to the wolves or not, if you do, you better come back leading the pack. Leadership is not simply about finding the best talent. It's about bringing out the absolute best in everyone you cross paths with. It's about having a presence that when people are around you, they get all fired up to go and leave their impact. They look at life much differently after being around you. If you see someone standing next to me or Brian, it's probably because they are better at us than something."
Dude, that was powerful, man.
Fire.
Super, super powerful. And I just want to start out by saying, leadership, I'm just going to take this from John Maxwell because he is the #1 leadership guru in the world. He's written over 70 books from it. But he says leadership is influence, nothing less and nothing more. The ability to make people move. I mean, that is definitely what I think leadership is. I think Mike agrees. It's the way that you can get people, and everything that Mike said in his book, get people moving, motivated, and getting them around you to get them fired up. I mean, that is what a leader does, and it's all influence. So, let's talk more of what leadership is. What is it, Mike?
Well, I mean, to me, my definition of leadership is bringing out the best in people around you, not the mess in them. I mean, you could, the thing that I thought of when you gave that quote from John Maxwell is literally, you can't be a leader just because you know everything and you're a master of your craft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you honestly can't find a way to use that to impact the greater good, then you're not going to be that effective at leadership. So you're going to have no influence. It goes back to exactly what you said. So, I think that leadership is the ability to inspire and motivate and bring out the best in all the people around you. It's not just about your individual self.
Yeah, I agree. Leaders hold themselves accountable. They don't, always claim to be the best. They're just visionaries, and they go and they're not afraid to step out from the pack. So, a lot of people have this question, and honestly, some people are and maybe some aren't, but is leadership something that can be learned, or is it something that you're born with?
I think both. And you and I talked about this before where, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I naturally, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything here.
Beep, beep.
Actually, yeah, I am. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. No, but, growing up, I always kind of assumed a natural leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes that was verbally, sometimes that was non-verbally, but it always, I always wanted to be the first person. I always wanted to make the final decision. So for me, it came natural, but I do believe that if you don't feel like you're a leader early on, you can learn and become a leader down the road.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, we all crawled before we walked. I mean, people, I think that there's a certain DNA that can have more naturally born leaders, but I think it is something that can be learned, something that can be practiced, and something that you can do things that you can do on a daily basis to help your influence with people. Maybe it's not as big of an influence as some of the major leaders that we've seen out there, but if you're influencing people, creating movements, I think that's just an amazing thing, and then you're a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree totally. And most people would say, well, if I'm not a great leader right now, how do I get better at it?
Yeah.
And my advice to them would be you have to practice it. You have to put yourself in positions where maybe the final decision comes upon you, or maybe you're the first one that has to do something and be the guinea pig. And you know what? If that's the case, great, do it with confidence. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'll quote him. He said, when you come up to a door of opportunity, don't knock. You need to kick the damn door in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what is being a leader, is being aggressive and having a sense of urgency.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that discipline within you, and it's that decision making that I think is what you're kind of talking about, having that confidence to just make that decision. You know what? Like, a leader isn't afraid to go out there and do it, and then if it fails or it's wrong, it's not the worst thing in the world. That person is a visionary. They go out and they find the next way. It's like, find your way through a maze half the time. So if he goes out, hits a wall, chances are he'll be able to come back and say, my bad, let's keep moving forward though, And I think that doing it with confidence and making decisions and having that self-discipline is so important.
One thing I would add to that, as you were talking, the quote came to my head that the master has failed more times than the beginner amateur has even attempted. So as a leader, that you could expect to, quote unquote, fail, even though we don't believe that there's such thing as failure, either winning or learning. So that's what you need to keep in mind, is that you are going to fail, aka learn, many, many times before you're able to take that next step.
Yeah. So I think I think we sort of hit on this, but how do we use leadership? What are some ways? Well, clearly there's verbal leaders, and then there's the nonverbal leaders, by just showing by example, just doing. Most leaders, I think that there's great to have that outspoken person, that person who's going to stand up and yell and be the biggest cheerleader. But then there's that leader who may be more quiet or a bit more introverted, but he's just getting shit done. You know what I'm saying? Like, that person is just showing by example. And once somebody is leveling up like that, it's hard not to follow. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and personally, I've experienced being under leaders that have used both verbal and nonverbal, and I think both are effective. Now, some people respond differently to either or, but, like, for example, in basketball, growing up, I could give a big pep talk in the locker room verbally, get everyone motivated, but I also took it upon myself to go out and try to completely dominate the game, where I didn't have to say anything. I just pumped my teammates up from crushing people on the court, and the same thing for you with soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to, you can say a lot of things, a lot of people can say a lot of things, but if you're not executing and going out there and doing it, it's kind of like, I mean, we all saw, behind the scenes in the locker room of like LeBron James. He's a very vocal leader, but if he wasn't going out there scoring 45 points,
exactly,
people would probably be like, well, what the hell is this guy even talking about, So I think there might be a little bit of a difference between like a super motivator and a true, leader. In a lot of ways. But let's dive into the leadership values here and might kind of go through some of like the characteristics of a great leader.
For me, I honestly think that the top two characteristics of a good leader would be communication and trust. I think with the communication, obviously you need to be able to communicate, like we said, verbally or non-verbally, to get your point across and to start that movement forward. And if you don't have any trust, well, that movement's going nowhere. You need to have their trust. They need to believe in you. They need to feel comfortable with the decisions that you're making so that you can push that movement forward. Those are my top two.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't trust that person, then you're not believing in their vision, and you're not going to follow that person. But I think that, I really like the vision casting part of it. I think a leader is able to see past some things, like we talked about. You may hit a wall, or the master will run into an obstacle, but for some reason a lot of leaders are just able to almost see right through that and and understand like what's on the other side. They always just kind of know. They're always forward thinking. So that's big for me, especially you know, in the leadership role. And then the decision makers, you know. But we talked about that. I mean, you just got to make decisions. You know, the leader isn't somebody who's just going to sit on the sidelines and watch. I mean, he's going to make a decision. He or she is going to make a decision no matter what.
Right. Yeah, I think being an effective leader, you need to know your self-worth. Like you need to, you need to know your own value. You need to stop giving people discounts and pussyfooting around. You just need to get shit done, basically, you know, and make those decisions. Be confident. Communicate to your team around you, and just, you know, break through those plateaus.
Yeah, and next to that, we also had self-awareness, which I think most leaders or people in power have a self-awareness to them. Well, some may not think so, but I truly believe that they know, you know, what they're talking about, what they're saying, how they're going about it. They just see themselves in their, and I said it before, but I just think great leaders are able to admit when they've made mistakes and then continue moving forward. Like that's self-awareness, that's understanding that. So let's dive into the impact of leadership and kind of what's so impactful about being a leader. Why should people strive to even be leaders, you know?
Yeah, we talked about this actually off air before we started this particular podcast, but like literally without leadership, you really don't have anything. You have a bunch of, you know, sheep running around like chickens with their head cut off. And, you know, there's no sense of direction or anything like that. So I think that there absolutely has to be a leader so that there is a vision, there is a particular goal, and there's like a plan of attack to actually get that movement started and get to where you want to be.
Yeah, and just something that comes to mind as you were talking about that is great leaders create great leaders. And that comes with empowerment. Leaders go out there and they empower. I mean, I guess the biggest example of this would be like Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like how he had the disciples but empowered them to kind of take, you know, I mean, hey, look, I'm not pushing religion. You know, that's not what I'm here talking. Like, I'm just giving an example here, so let's not get crazy.
And he only had 12 followers.
Yeah, so. Right. And he only, well.
and his role was pretty substantial.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, you know, Jesus Christ built the biggest business in the world. I mean, look, it's still going. So it's the longest, you know, business. But what he did was empower them to go out and get more followers and more. And I think that giving them those, you know, saying, hey, here's the keys, here's the leadership, that's what's so important, because otherwise it does become like the sheep just following, you know, it's the, Ralph Steyer said this really great and wrote this book called Flight of the Buffalo on empowerment. And, you know, if the lead buffalo is doing something, when, you know, he's walking around, all the buffalo are following him around, but if he falls over dead, they're not going to know what to do. So if they don't empower and create other leaders behind you, then I think it's going to be really tough.
Yeah. You know, one thing that came to mind, and we're kind of backtracking a little bit here, but when you were talking about the self-awareness, I think that most great leaders do know their strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
And with those weaknesses, they're able to delegate things correctly, which again is going back to, you know, making sure that your staff and the people around you are taken care of. Again, I can't say that quote enough, bringing out the best in you, not the mess in you. You know, like being a good leader is not just about me. Let's say I was a Fortune 500 CEO, let's say I had 1,500 employees, and I'm crushing it personally, but I mean, what am I doing for my employees? They're the driving force behind the business. So I have to be an effective leader to them so that we can all collect a paycheck. Yeah. I mean, on the most fundamental level.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the leader is after the mission, not really himself. I think the person who is just trying to have self-gratification won't go very far. But if the leader that has the mission in mind and be able to empower the employees and get the people to move forward, even if he's not there, now that's a movement. Now that's made an impact, you know. And I think that's a huge part of leadership. So.
One thing I wanted to add too is, you know, I've learned personally myself, and Brian, you are a great example. is surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me in many different categories. Like, that's one thing that, you know, I've done over the, I'd say probably the past 3 years, is I have reached out and connected with people that are so much smarter, so much better than me, that when I leave the meeting, I'm not, you know, throwing a pity party feeling sorry for myself. Like, I am motivated. I am motivated to invest in myself and to get better at my craft, and being around people like you. I mean, this is the reason why we're doing this podcast right now, is to pay it forward and inspire those that are listening right now in some shape or form.
Yeah, dude, that's probably one of the best points that we've made so far, is leaders do surround themselves with really, really great people. You know, like, we don't become better. Like, you wouldn't have become who you were in basketball if you continued to play against the worst players. It's why LeBron James brings on D. Wade, or joined, you know, the Heat. It's why he brought on Kevin Love, who's right here. You know, to if you're listening, he's not really here. We have a bobblehead. But yeah, I mean, that's why he surrounded himself with people that, you know, Kevin Love's a great shooter. LeBron's not the best shooter, but he brought that to his team, and he understands that. If you're going to make a true impact, you have to surround yourself with the best of the best. You've got to build an A-team constantly, and that's what leaders do.
Yep, and it's earned. It's not given. I have that written down on my notes right here. Like, literally, like, you know, people are not going to give you that leadership role. You are going to have to earn it by putting in the time, putting in the work, earning the trust of people around you. Like, going into college, my freshman year, we had 26 guys come in my freshman year at Heidelberg. And for those that don't know, Brian and I went to college together, didn't even know each other, probably passed each other on the sidewalk. But us basketball guys, we didn't talk to those soccer dudes. You know what I'm saying? We were better than them. But anyways, our coach had us do a foxhole thing where everyone on the team, probably 30 or 40 of us, had to vote on if you were in war and you needed, you know, 3 other people in the hole with you, 1 person on each side of you and 1 to your back in battle, who would it be? And, you know, I was actually chosen as a freshman unanimously to be in that hole. But I earned that shit, you know, like, because I was going up to Heidelberg, and I was playing with the guys in the summer before school even started. I was there at every little practice, you know, for the local guys, and I earned that up until that point in time, not by sitting there talking, but by actually playing and doing well, you know, and keeping my authenticity, which we talked about before.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, leaders need, they consistently roll up their sleeves and have to do the dirty work to prove that they're worthy enough to be in that position, to be able to move people. Because if you're not doing that, then you can't just say, I'm a leader, here I am, like, follow me. That's just not going to work.
Right.
Not until you're proving yourself, you know, through all those things that you just talked about. So that's great, man. So you want to dive into the challenge for people, and we'll tell them what to do? Or?
Yeah. Well, one last thing I wanted to say, and we'll wrap it up here with our challenge and our usual health tip, is that, you know, I think the take-home message for this is, if you're a leader right now, you can get better. You can get way better. If you're not a leader right now, you can become a leader. It'll take some time, but have that confidence. Know your self-worth, know your value, believe in yourself, and go after what it is you want. So, you know, don't feel like you're never going to become a leader, because this is not true.
Yeah, I agree, and it does, and we talked about this in the last episode and previous episodes, but the episode, you have to lead yourself first. Before you can lead anybody else, you have to lead yourself, because if you aren't doing all the things correctly to you, then it's going to be really tough for you to get out there and impact other people.
Practice what you preach.
Yes. I mean,
Boom.
Come on. That is an old time saying. People say that. That is real. I mean, you have to practice what you preach. If you're not, then you're not a leader. Then you're not going to be. And even if your leadership is going, it's not going to go far unless you continuously work on your craft and push yourself. That is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. So the challenge for this next week, before the next episode comes out, is the next opportunity to make a decision, right or wrong. Just take charge and do something. Stand up for yourself and do what you feel you need to do. I mean, just make a decision, take leadership, and run with it. And at the end of the day, like, even if it doesn't go where you want it to go, keep that vision, keep that mission, and keep pushing forward. That's all you need to do, but make a decision. So
Yeah, and the example I would give to that is, let's say you're in your work setting and your boss, maybe asks for some people to head a project or, volunteer for something. Like, be the first person and like be the captain and put yourself in a vulnerable position and say, you know what, I'll spearhead this. You know what I mean? And just, it's going to be uncomfortable, but get comfortable with being uncomfortable if you want to be a leader and have self-growth.
100%.
So we'll wrap this up with the health tip. This week I want to talk about gluten. If you do not know about gluten, I think you've been living under a rock for probably the past 5 or 6 years. But the biggest misconception with gluten is that people say, well, I don't have celiac disease. And I shake their hand and I say, well, congratulations, because that's only about 2% of the population that actually has celiac disease. And what the research is showing is that gluten is not confined to just the gut. Gluten impacts your entire body because gluten tends to be pro-inflammatory to the body. Okay, so the studies show that when you ingest gluten over long periods of time, that it can cause free radicals in your brain. It can cause improper digestion issues all the way down the line. I mean, the research is very blatant that people that are heavy gluten they have heavy gluten consumption in their diets have about a 30 to 40% chance of getting Alzheimer's.
Really?
Okay, so that's what I tell people, is that regardless if you're sensitive to it or not, even if you went and got a blood test done, in your blood work, I avoid gluten because it's pro-inflammatory, period, no matter if you're sensitive to it or not.
Yeah.
So it's not a fad, it's not a trend, it's here to stay. Do your own research, be your own guinea pig, but my advice is to try to eliminate gluten, go gluten-free, which it's not very hard. It's very easy to do so, and your body will thank you for it.
Wow, I mean, talk about surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. That's why I brought this guy on. I mean, seriously. It was just, I didn't know that, some of that stuff, and I think that that's really important because, we got it. If we're not, healthy throughout, we're never gonna, you can't be a leader if you're unhealthy, you know what
And
I
Brian,
mean?
you would already know this if you read my book. Okay? So,
I haven't
do your
gotten to that
homework.
part. It's daily devotional. I haven't hit June yet, or whatever. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are so grateful. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.